A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, the Walt Disney Company purchased Lucasfilm from George Lucas for the paltry sum of $4 billion. Now, 8 years ago, fans were split on just how to feel about the buyout. Would Disney be able to keep the franchise fresh, amazing, and alive in the wake of George Lucas no longer being in control? Would they treat the whole franchise like a cash cow for merchandising and flood the market with cheap Chinese-made toys? The answer is actually yes to both of those questions. But it took time to get there. It took a new trilogy, 2 spin-off films, a couple animated shows, a Disney theme park, and a streaming show to get Disney Star Wars to a place where fans seemed to be happy. No matter how you feel about the sequel trilogy, that time is now behind us. Disney and Lucasfilm realized that they needed a plan to go forward. They needed to rebuild Star Wars from the ground up, and they needed a leader whose name wasn't Kathleen Kennedy. So, The Mandalorian was born. It was a gamble. Honestly, the whole idea of a live-action serialized Star Wars TV show on Disney Plus, especially coming off of the backlash to The Last Jedi and the failure of Solo, was a massive bet. But it paid off big time. The Mandalorian set the internet ablaze with a new fandom of young and old Star Wars fans that are just happy to scream, "We're back, baby!" This is the story of how 2 lifelong Star Wars fans became friends and brought a multi-billion-dollar franchise back from the brink of extinction that was being milked by a corporation that didn't really seem to care about it at all. This is a story of how the best show on TV came into our lives. But this wasn't the first time a live-action Star Wars show was attempted. Back in 2005, George Lucas wanted to tell the story of the seedy underbelly of Star Wars by focusing on a television show called Star Wars Underground. Lucas described it as one show that will split into 4 shows focusing on different characters. The show was going to take place between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, and feature characters like Han Solo, Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, and Boba Fett. Lucas further described the show as a soap opera with a bunch of personal drama in it, and it would focus more on character development rather than action set pieces. Instead of basing this series on the serialized stories from the 30s, of which Star Wars and Indiana Jones are originally based on, he wanted to focus more on the noir-style films from the 1940s. The key idea was that Underground would focus on the period where the Empire was trying to take things over and facing pushback. I ultimately feel that this is what Star Wars Rebels turned into. Now, in 2009, Lucas began active development on the series. He commissioned 50 scripts that all had standard television runtime of approximately 42 minutes. Some test footage was shot, and it didn't leak online until 2018, but the scope and scale of Star Wars Underground proved to be too expensive for not only George Lucas, but Disney itself when they bought the company back in 2012. And with that, Star Wars Underground was ultimately canceled, but it did lay the groundwork for what was to come with The Mandalorian. Now, before diving into the show itself, we need to quickly go back over how the 2 creative geniuses, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, met. Back in 2008, both men were at Skywalker Ranch working on separate projects and just so happened to meet each other one day. Favreau was putting the finishing touches on Iron Man, and Filoni was working on the first season of The Clone Wars. The 2 quickly began a friendship and showed each other their projects first. In fact, Filoni was the first person to watch Iron Man, and Jon Favreau and his son were the first people to watch The Clone Wars. Hell, Favreau even appeared in The Clone Wars as Death Watch Patriarch Pre Vizsla, and came back for The Mandalorian as Paz Vizsla in Chapter 3 during the first season. Not to mention, Favreau was also the voice of Rio Durant in Solo: A Star Wars Story. This was a match made in heaven. Now, when Favreau was working on The Lion King for Disney back in 2017, he pitched an idea for a Star Wars show to Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. Kennedy is the one who actually suggested that he meet up with Dave Filoni to further hammer out the concept. When Filoni and Favreau first met up to discuss this live-action show, Dave actually scribbled a drawing of a baby that was the same species as Jedi Master Yoda. And on that day, the greatest secret in the known galaxy, Baby Yoda was born. It was during this time that Favreau was directing The Lion King, and he wanted to explore the scum and villainy of the Star Wars universe. He did this actually at night when his directing duties for the day were finished. And if you've seen the photorealistic remake of The Lion King and you put it next to The Mandalorian, you can see that it is very much a similar situation. Like in 2004, when Steven Spielberg rushed through directing War of the Worlds in order to jump into his passion project, Munich. Favreau might be Disney's go-to guy for the remake, but his heart and soul belong in the Mos Eisley Cantina. Now, news of the show was kept under wraps for like the longest time. In fact, it wasn't until November 2017 that we learned from former Disney CEO Bob Iger that they were developing a live-action Star Wars series for the newly announced Disney+. No other information was given at the time, and because of the backlash to The Last Jedi, people were very skeptical. But when it was first reported that Jon Favreau was going to be the writer and showrunner of the unnamed live-action Star Wars show for Disney Plus in March of 2018, fans, they lost their shit. For many of us, Jon Favreau is the guy who kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That kind of built-in fan base comes with a massive amount of trust and respect, and believe me, we gave it in spades. Here's an interesting side bit of information that gets criticized with this announcement, but Kathleen Kennedy also said at the time that the show was an opportunity for diverse writers and directors to tackle Star Wars, when it had previously just been handled by white guys, which is true, it had been. This angered some of the Star Wars hating internet that was using the backlash to The Last Jedi to further attack Kathleen Kennedy and Star Wars over literally anything they could. But when the show came out, they were pretty quickly silenced, and thankfully they've shut up since then. Because let's face it, we all love Deborah Chow and Rick Famuyiwa, and also Bryce Dallas Howard, and Peyton Reed, and Robert Rodriguez, and everyone else who's worked on the show. But I digress. 5 months later, in October 2018, Jon Favreau was able to finally announce the name of the show. Star Wars fans learned that The Mandalorian was the official name to the show, and Favreau described it as, after the stories of Jango and Boba Fett, another warrior emerges in the Star Wars universe. The Mandalorian is set after the fall of the Empire and before the emergence of the First Order. We follow the travels of a lone gunfighter in the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from the authority of the New Republic. Fans of the long-canceled expanded universe were quite happy with this announcement. The stories that took place in the years following the Return of the Jedi introduced Star Wars fans to brand new heroes and villains that have ultimately stood the test of time. Many of them thought that this would be a door into merging some of the Star Wars legends into the current canon, something they were still salty with Lucasfilm about when the EU was decanonized back in 2014 to make headway for the new canon, which was going to tie into the sequel trilogy. But the following day, directors for the season were revealed, including Dave Filoni, Taika Waititi, Bryce Dallas Howard, Rick Famuyiwa, and Deborah Chow. Jon Favreau was unable to direct any of the first season due to his commitments to The Lion King, and wanted the series directors to be a diverse group of filmmakers who could bring different perspectives to the series. The only prerequisite he had for the directors is that they love Star Wars. According to Famuyiwa, Favreau described the group as a Dirty Dozen, Magnificent Seven type of crew, which it is. If you've seen the series, you know what I'm talking about. The season was originally rumored to have a budget of $100 million, and that $100 million was actually updated in 2019 to roughly $15 million per episode. To put it in perspective, the rumored $120 million budget was more than the first 6 Star Wars films. Disney wasn't fucking around. This was their make it or break it following the sequel trilogy backlash, and they more or less gave Favreau a blank check. But why did the show cost so much money to make? What exactly was Favreau bringing to the table to make the budget so high? He says the actors aren't brought on location. The location is brought to the actors. Well, what does that mean? A 21st century Star Wars show needs 21st century technology and industrial light and magic delivered. Based off of the technology that Jon Favreau used while he was shooting The Jungle Book, he wanted to create a soundstage where he would use large screens to create interactive lighting, so when live action footage was combined with the digital environment in post-production, the effect would be more realistic. But his original tests on The Jungle Book were effective but very time-consuming. For The Lion King, he worked with visual effects company Moving Pictures Company and the Unity video game engine to create a virtual camera system that allowed him to film the scenes in virtual reality as if he was filming with physical cameras. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he described it like this. In The Lion King, we built a tool set, basically a multiplayer VR filmmaking game using the Unity game engine. We built a bunch of tools working with MPC and developer Magnopus and Unity, and we developed a way by which you could actually create environments and set up cameras and shots within VR. In The Mandalorian, we used a lot of the same tools to plan the entire production, working with the Unreal Engine from Epic Games. But Lion King was a much different production because there was no actual photography. For Mandalorian, we take that cut, and instead of going right to the animation and render like we did on Lion King, we build sets in a digital environment that we project onto a video wall. This is the stagecraft technology that fuels The Mandalorian. Favreau further describes the soundstage like this. It's on a large soundstage with a ceiling and a 360-degree view. We change the environment every day. Sometimes it's a spaceship, sometimes it's a desert, sometimes it's in ice or mud. There's limited location work on the series, but it's all done within the LA area. But we also go all over the world, like Iceland and Chile, where we actually shoot assets that we put into layers of the video wall. So there is real photography being incorporated, but the actors aren't brought on location. The location is now brought to the actors. Now, the stagecraft is based on Epic's video game engine, Unreal, and it consists of large LED video screens on which digital environments can be rendered in real time for actors to perform in front of. This technology was created to help open up the filmmaking process in a virtual space, but it will revolutionize Hollywood for years to come, especially because of the current COVID-19 pandemic. Probably like the coolest thing about this technology is that Favreau isn't holding it behind a lock and key. If other production companies wanted to come and learn from them, they were open to teaching them about it. It's this kind of collaborative process that really pushes technology forward in the industry. And quite frankly, as a filmmaker, I'm very happy that it's being used for good and not strictly for profit. Now, if you've seen the show, you know exactly what they're able to do with it, and it's utterly mind-bending. A month after the announcement of the title of the show, we finally got our look at just who was going to be in The Mandalorian. After first being rumored to be cast in the title role, Pedro Pascal was confirmed to be portraying The Mandalorian. Pascal initially thought he was being cast as Boba Fett due to the visual similarities between that character and Mando, but as we now know, he's a separate character named Din Djarin. Gina Carano and Nick Nolte joined the series cast later in November of 2018, and Lucasfilm announced the next month that Pascal would star alongside Carano, Nolte, Giancarlo Esposito, Emily Swallow, Carl Weathers, Omid Abti, and Werner Herzog. Favreau revealed in March of 2019 that Taika Waititi himself would provide a voice for a bounty hunter droid in the series that was believed to be the character IG-88. It was actually revealed a month later to be IG-11, a whole new character. When the character details for other cast members were announced, Carl Weathers' character Grief Karga was actually an alien that they killed off in the third episode, but they liked him so much that the prosthetic makeup was removed and the role was ultimately extended during production, which is awesome because who doesn't love Grief Karga? Now, when it comes to the creatures of the show, Favreau wanted to focus on some of the more D-list species in the Star Wars universe. This is what led him to create the Ugnaught character Kuil, who very quickly became a fan favorite for his line, "I have spoken." As for the child, its creation is quite fascinating. The child was created primarily with an animatronic puppet, which was augmented with visual effects. The production had originally expected to be mostly CGI for the character, and different puppeteers controlled its body and head movements, its eyes, and ears. Other puppeteers moved in for the walking scenes, and during filming on the third episode, Deborah Chow and the visual effects team removed the puppet so they could film a version of the scene without it. This was in case they decided that the puppet was not convincing enough and would need to be replaced with CGI. But Werner Herzog called them cowards for not trusting the puppet and encouraged them to not avoid visual effects. He actually proved to be right, as the production discovered that the puppet worked better than expected and began retooling scenes to work around its limitations rather than resort to strictly CG. And here's the thing, the child was the breakout star of the show's first season. Even though he now has a name, Grogu, back then he was just known as Baby Yoda. Hell, he'll probably never not be known as Baby Yoda. But Disney took a huge holiday 2019 hit when they didn't market the hell out of Baby Yoda. But why they didn't is an interesting tale. So Favreau chose to not reveal the child in any marketing for the series after a discussion with Donald Glover during the making of The Lion King, which Glover noted that audiences appreciate being surprised since it doesn't happen very much anymore. In fact, Glover gave the surprise release of a Beyoncé album as an example. Favreau stated that Disney was on board with this decision, even though it meant they were unable to begin work on the merchandise featuring the character before he was revealed in the series premiere in November 2019. This was actually due because there was fear that merchandise plans would leak and reveal the character early, and it meant that merchandise of the character could not be ready for the Christmas and holiday season. By the end of 2019, there was huge demand for merchandise featuring Baby Yoda, and Disney's merchandising unit had begun planning for the character, but had only released t-shirts featuring concept art so far. Companies like Hasbro had begun work on the child merchandise as well, but it wouldn't be ready until 2020. But a large amount of unofficial merchandise began to appear online ahead of the holiday season. So people started marketing this because they knew that it was a goldmine. The principal photography for the show began during the first week of October 2018, with Filoni directing the first episode. The season was filmed at Manhattan Beach Studios in California under the title Project Huckleberry, with limited location filming in the Los Angeles area. What's really cool is that George Lucas visited the set as a birthday surprise to Jon Favreau, which is where that viral image of him holding Baby Yoda came from. So that was pretty cool. And then a couple days later, there were reports that came out that several items described as quote unquote nothing of substance were stolen from the series set at the end of October. I don't know if they've been recovered or if they're really what they were. Hopefully one day we'll find out. What's really cool is that Dave Filoni made his live action directorial debut with this series. Coming off of Clone Wars and Rebels, he wanted to try live action, and he saw The Mandalorian as a chance to apply the lessons he had learned from Lucas about live action filmmaking during the making of those animated shows, and also described Jon Favreau as a mentor who was furthering Filoni's education and could help him overcome challenges specific to live action. Filoni also served as a second unit director for the other filmmakers, filming quick pickup shots for them as they needed while they were busy working on other scenes. Favreau noted that the fourth episode of the series, Sanctuary, was the most difficult to make due to its forest setting and action requirements, and joked that this was the reason that Bryce Dallas Howard, the most inexperienced of the first season's directors, was given that episode to direct. She felt protected by the experience of having Filoni and Favreau around, and she felt comfortable to go to them with any questions about filmmaking and Star Wars respectfully. She also said that she had felt like she had creative freedom when directing the episode, something that surprised her father, Ron Howard, who directed Solo: A Star Wars Story, and clearly did not have that level of freedom. Now, Pedro Pascal himself, his commitments to filming Wonder Woman 1984 and performing in the Broadway production of King Lear resulted in stunt doubles Brendan Wayne, who was also related to John Wayne, and Lateef Crowder portraying the Mandalorian on set in Pascal's absence. We're talking like the vast majority of season 1, with Pascal later dubbing in the lines. Pedro said that he felt uneasy about this when there was more than just a couple of pages of one-on-one scene and not being able to totally author the performance, but he got over it. The filming commenced ultimately on February 27th, 2019, and fans were waiting to see the trailer. They wanted anything they can get their hands on, but they had to make their way to Chicago for Star Wars Celebration 2019. The panel for The Mandalorian was live streamed, but they kept the official footage for fans in the room only. Thankfully, this didn't stop some angels in human form from bootlegging the trailer and the extended scene preview and leaking it online. It was here that the footage shown revealed that Bill Burr and Mark Boone Jr. from FX's Sons of Anarchy had been cast in the season, with Burr portraying an outlaw that we've all now known to come and love as Mayfield. We didn't get the first full trailer until August at the D23 Expo, where it was also revealed that Ming-Na Wen would appear, which had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fans screaming with joy considering the show was coming to a close. One of the things, though, I don't want to overlook here is how amazing the music is for The Mandalorian. Composer Ludwig Göransson created a wonderful ambiance and a kick-ass theme song for the show, and I personally love the fact that a digital soundtrack has been released alongside each episode. Now, with everything set, finished, and ready to go, all we fans had to do was wait until the launch of Disney Plus to see what goodies Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni had in store for us. The series was supposed to premiere on Disney Plus November 12th, 2019. However, Disney dropped the episode 3 hours early at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard on November 11th without telling anyone. Thankfully, my fat ass was already at my TV when the episode hit, so I did not have to wait. I devoured the pilot episode 4 times in the first 24 hours. I absolutely adored it, and so did millions of other people. Baby Yoda was the #1 trending topic on Twitter, and even though many didn't want to spoil the show for anyone else, in that specific moment, that was hard to not do. Hell, within 4 days of its release, The Mandalorian had a stronger US demand compared to 4 of 2019's biggest streaming originals. Netflix's The Umbrella Academy, When They See Us, The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, and Amazon Prime Video's Good Omens. However, it did register less than 40% of the demand of Netflix's Stranger Things and was behind other established shows like DC Universe's Titans. Nor was it in the top 10 for the most in-demand shows across all of TV networks and digital services for the first week. But TV Time, a popular app allowing users to track shows and movies that they're watching, stated though the number of people interested in The Mandalorian had doubled for the following week and noted that it had the largest gain of any TV show. This was a word-of-mouth show, an absolute word-of-mouth show that's done awesome for the 16 episodes that we've seen. Now, critically speaking, the show did do quite well. Rotten Tomatoes reported a 93% approval rating with an average score of about 8 out of 10, based on only 36 reviews at the time of this information being gathered. It is higher since then. The site's critical consensus reads, action-packed and expertly crafted, if at times a bit too withholding, The Mandalorian is a welcome addition to the Star Wars universe that benefits greatly from the cuteness of its cargo. Metacritic, on the other hand, which uses a weighted average, assigned a score of 70 out of 100 based on 29 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. And that makes a lot of sense. You know, it's not for everybody right off the bat. It took a little bit of time to get to where it's at now, but as we just finish up the second season this weekend, it is easy to see that the show has broken records across the board and has garnered a very large and dedicated fan base of people. And the thing is, the show absolutely earned everything that it has. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy and everyone else at Lucasfilm put together one hell of a presentation. One that brought this 38-year-old father of 2 to absolute tears during the season 2 finale. I love The Mandalorian, and I cannot wait to see what they come up with for season 3, the Boba Fett series, Rangers of the New Republic, and the Ahsoka show Never mind all of the other shows we're going to be getting, like Cassian Andor and Obi-Wan and the animated properties. Star Wars is 100% here to stay, and I don't know about you, but I am 100% for it. As always, if you guys enjoyed this look at the history of The Mandalorian and you want to see more content like it, please suggest me a movie or a TV show to go and dive into in the comment section. If you haven't already, please leave a like. Please join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/3bucktheater, and be sure to hit that subscribe and that bell. I loved making this video, and I hope you guys had fun listening to it. I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day, and remember, may the Force be with you.